And Gimel Dalid.
Yeah.
Rabbi Gamil says 3 women may knead at the same time and bake in the same oven, one after the other. But the Chachamim say 3 women may be occupied with dough simultaneously. One kneads, another shapes, and a third bakes. Rabbi Akiva says not all women and not all kinds of wood, not all ovens are alike. This is the general rule. If the dough rises, let her wet it with cold water. Hey, partly leavened dough must be burned, but one who eats it is exempt from punishment. Furrowed dough must be burned, and one who eats it is liable on charas. Which dough is classified as partly leavened? When the furrows are like locust horns. Which is classified as furrowed? When the furrows run into each other. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. But the Chachamim say if one eats either of these, they're liable to charas. And if so, which is partly leavened dough? Whenever its surface turns pallid, like that of a man whose hairs stand on end. Uh, Vav. If the 14th of Nisan falls on the Sabbath, we remove everything before the Sabbath. These are the words of Rev Meir. But the Chachamim say everything is removed at its usual time. But Eliezer ben Tzadok says Truma must be removed before the Sabbath and Kulin at its usual time. Okay.
Okay. Cool. Zayin, haholech lishchot es pescho. So, guys, on his way to the mitzvah of shechting his korban pesach, or vilamoris bano, or else he's on his way to do a bris milah, vilechol sudas ersin bebeis chamiv, or he's on his way to eat to have sheva brachas in his father-in-law's house, and it's erev pesach. V'nizkar sheyesh lo chametz b'soch peso, and he thinks, I forgot that I haven't burned my chametz yet. If he has the time to go back, burn the chametz, and still get back in time for the mitzvah, then he should do that. But if not, if he's got to make a decision between going back to burn his chametz and doing the mitzvah that he's currently engaged in, then what must he do? Then he can get away with the chametz part by just saying, I declare it ownerless. That's it. And he can get away with that. Why do we give him this special dispensation? Because he's osek b'mitzvah. Okay, we don't want him to give up on one mitzvah just so he can do the other mitzvah in the best possible way. Because me'ikar adin, all you really need to do is do a bittul in your heart. Okay.
Do that today?
Lahatzil min hagayis. Now, what happens if a guy is on his way to try and save other people from enemy attack? Umina nahar, or there's been a flood and he has to go and rescue people. Mina listin, or from bandits. Mina dleika, from a fire. Minha mapolis, or from a landfall. Ivatel belibo, then forget about going back. You don't think, hang on, will I have time to do one or the other? You're involved in pikuach nefesh. So when somebody is involved in pikuach nefesh, we don't let him go back to burn his chametz, because that would just be completely the wrong thing in the context. Okay. Velishbos shvisas harishus. But if he's just going out to put out his eruv foods, for example, because he wants to be able to go to the neighboring city, this is just a rishus. It's not something where he has a chiyuv to do anything. And therefore, yachzor miyad. Then we don't give him any special dispensation. He has to go back and burn his chametz properly. And if that means that he doesn't get to put out his eruv, no, that's too bad.
So can someone do that today?
So we've seen 3 different levels over here. One is the rishus, where we don't give him, we tell him go back and burn your chametz. The other one is where he's on his way to do a mitzvah, and we say, okay, it depends. Will you have time to do both? If you have time to do both, then go back and burn, then go and do the mitzvah. But if not, then do the mitzvah and do the bittul in your heart. But if he's on his way in the Hatzalah ambulance to somewhere, we say forget about going back. You do the bittul in your heart, and you go and do your pikuach nefesh.
Can one do that today?
I'm sorry?
Can one do that today? Can someone say, they're riding on the road, it's getting really late, he's going to miss the time to burn, and just nullify in his heart? He's okay with
I
that?
can't see why this would have any difference whether it was in those times or these times. It's the same mitzvahs we're talking about. You've got a mitzvah to get rid of chametz. You've got a then and now. Okay, so you're not going to be taking your korban pesach, so we'll remove that from the list of possible mitzvahs you could be involved in. But if somebody's on his way to do a bris milah, or to have or to do any other kind of mitzvah that might be mentioned in the beginning of the Mishnah, and we'll have the same. It'll be the same din.
All right.
Okay. Similarly, somebody leaves Yerushalayim, and he looks in his bag and he says, "Oh my gosh, I've got meat from the korban shlamim." Now, korban the shlamim can be eaten anywhere in Yerushalayim. And now that he's left the walls of Yerushalayim, it's assur to eat it, and there's a din of streifa on this meat. He has to burn it. Okay, now that's not allowed to be eaten. But where does it have to be burned? Im avar tzofim. If he's left, which is probably Mount Scopus, har tzofim, sofa bimkomo, then we don't tell him go back to Yerushalayim. We say, okay, burn it where you are. Bimlav, but if he's still close enough to Yerushalayim, then he has to go back into the mikdash. Basically, the bira is the Beis HaMikdash, and he can burn it in using the wood from the mizbeach. Yeah. The ad kama hen chozrin, and for what quantity? And this question is being asked both on the Basar Kodesh, which we just spoke about, and on the chametz, which he forgot to burn. Ad kama hen chozrin. So how much do you have to return? Rabbi Meir Omer zeva kabeitza. He says it's judged based on the tumah. So just as a kabeitza, you need a kabeitza of food in order to become tameh. Therefore, it's a kabeitza of food that you have to return for. Rabbi Yehuda Omer zeva kazayis. No, he says it's based. Rabbi Yehuda says it's based on the amount that you'd be chayav for eating it, right? And that's on a kazayis. Chachamim take a middle path and say, but Basar Kodesh b'kazayis, b'chametz b'kabeitza. They say when it comes to, so what's the svara over here? Because of the chumrah of kodshim, because kodshim is such a it's a very high level of kedusha. Therefore, he has to return even for a kazayas of meat that he finds with him. But if somebody leaves to find his Pesach, as we saw in the previous Mishnah, and he remembers that he's got chametz in his house, he only has to return in order to if it's a kabeitza of chametz or not or more. But if it's less than that, then you say, forget about it. And under all circumstances, you don't have to worry about it. And the halacha follows the chachamim. Okay, Perek Daled, makom shenagu. So this is the sugya of minhag makom. Makom shenagu lasos melacha ba'arbe Pesachim ad chatzos osin. So I think everyone has the minhag to not do malacha, at least to treat the afternoon of Erev Pesach as basically Chol HaMoed in terms of malacha. So you can do malacha if it's L'tzorech HaMoed and whatever, but you can't just like go to work and do all your regular stuff on Erev Pesach in the afternoon. So now the shaila is, what about the morning? So this was a case of minhag makom. What did people generally do in the mornings? And the Mishnah says, okay, so if you find yourself in a place where, or if you live in a place where this is the minhag to do malacha in the morning, that's fine. Then do malacha. Then you can't do malacha. What happens? If somebody is traveling between two different places and he finds himself in somewhere that has a different minhag, or mimakom she'en osin lemakom she'osin nosne elav chumrei makom sheyatza misham v'chumrei makom shehalach lasham. In other words, in either direction, he won't be allowed to do malacha in the morning. Okay, so because he keeps the chumras both of his place of origin and of the place where he is. Okay, va'al yishane adam mipnei hamachlokes. And a person must not deviate from the minhag makom because of machlokes. Now, this is an interesting thing because, hang on, you're deviating from the minhag makom. So let's say he's coming from a place where it's not the minhag to do malacha, and he goes to a place where it is the makom to do malacha. So let's say he's sitting there and being machmir on himself and not doing malacha, and everyone else is going out and doing malacha. What are they going to look at him and think? I think, oh, he's just got nothing to do. He's not going out with a sign in his hand saying, "I'm not doing malacha." Okay, so I don't think that this statement is saying, is kind of contradicting the previous statement. I think it's adding a. I mean, the Gemara is full of a machlokes about what is the purpose of this statement, and so it's only because, so when a person, when it says you shouldn't deviate in general, I think there's more of a general statement that that when you are, that wherever you are, when there's a minhag hamakom, don't do anything that is obviously different from the local minhag. And this is something that we learned in yeshiva, is that we had lots of different, you go to different shuls, and the minhag would be different whether you stand for lechadodi or sit for lechadodi, or whether you would for kaddish, would you stand or do you sit, and it's saying, just don't, if they have a minhag hamakom, you're not allowed to be mashane because of machlokes, which is quite an interesting thing. And my Rosh Hashiva Zatzal actually said, now that I'm thinking about it, I'll share the story. He said he once had a conundrum where he knew he was going to visit a community where the Rav of the community was a serious Rav, had paskened a certain halacha, and he wouldn't go into what it was. He just said there was a certain halacha, a certain minhag that they had, which Rabbi Goldpan, my Rosh Hashiva, held was an Isser D'Oraisa. He says, like, I mean, he's a Talmid Chacham and he's entitled to do that, but what must I do? Like, if I hold this as an Isser D'Oraisa and he's like Noeg Heter in it, and he asked Rav Moshe Feinstein, and Rav Moshe said, to tell you the truth, I also hold it's an Isser D'Oraisa, but he says if you're going into his community and he's the Rav and he's paskend, and it will be obvious by you refraining from doing whatever that you're like doing differently from him, then you have to do it. You're relying on his psak, and he says it's mutar, and he's a serious Rav. He's not like a conservative or something like that. He's an orthodox Rav. He's come to this conclusion. He's packed in this way. Then you have to do what he does. You're not allowed to be mishane. It's like, whoa, that's a big deal.
We had we went, this was years ago, when one of my sister-in-law's kids were being bar mitzvah, the first one, and we didn't know what to do. It was a reform shul, it was a whole, so we spoke to our Rav, and he said, get a place to stay. We had to stay in the shul. That was the only place they had for us to stay. We bought our own food. We had a plata, that whole business we went through.
Yeah.
Which they nicely unplugged when the caterers came in. So anyway, the rabbi said, don't do anything. Don't stand, don't sit, just sit there. Just don't say anything. Don't, So, right. And then people were saying Kaddish. And the next morning the Rav came, and we just sat. And the Rav came over and said, a lot of people are upset that you're not standing during Kaddish. I understand everything else, but, can you do something? So I said to myself, what would the Rav say? He'd probably say, just stand. Just stand and don't say anything, don't answer anything, but just stand, so there's no machlokas. So that's what we did. We stood up for it wasn't right. It wasn't worth causing a machlokas there, in the shul. Who are these Orthodox people?
Yeah, it's a difficult situation. I mean, I had exactly the same when my nephews had their bar mitzvahs, their respective bar mitzvahs, because they go to a reform shul, and so I just davened by myself at an Orthodox shul in the morning. They davened later. I turned up and I hung around in the foyer until it was time for them to lane, and I came in and listened to them laning and give them mazel tov and whatever. But I mean, I was pretty straight with my brother before. I said, I can't daven with you. Yeah.
He understood, I guess, though.
Yeah.
There was no. Anyway. It wasn't even an Orthodox shul to go to where I was. There was like out, and there was just no place to go. So I just davened with Kiddush, and that was it. Nothing else to do.
You davened by yourself, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Erevin, Yud Gimel.
For some reason, I thought we were starting a Beit today. I don't know, because we finished by Shabbos. I thought we were.
Shabbos goes into Erevin, yeah.
And then it was after. I don't know what it was. Anyway, okay. Aleph Aleph.
Well, actually, no.
No, wait. I have to go back. Erevin. I'm sorry. I'm right here. We are at.
So let's start. If we're going backwards, and we go to Yud
Gimel.
Yud Gimel.
Then we go back. May we replace? We may replace the dressing in the temple, but not in the provinces. For it is the first time it is prohibited here and there. We may tie a string in the temple, but not in the provinces. For the first time it is prohibited here and there. We may cut off a wart in the temple, but not in the provinces. If with an instrument, it is prohibited here and there. A Kohen who injured his finger may wrap reed grass over it in the temple, but not in the provinces. If to force out blood, it is prohibited here and there. We may spread salt on the ramps so that they should not slip, and we may draw water from the exile's well and from the great well, with a windlass on the Sabbath, and from flowing well on the Yom Tov. If a sheretz was found in the temple, a Kohen may remove it with his sash, but not as to prolong the presence of the tomb of contamination. These are the words of Rabbi Yochanan and Brocha, and Rabbi Yehuda says with wooden tongs so as not to increase the contamination. From where do we remove it? From the temple, the antechamber, and between the antechamber and the altar. These are the words of Rabbi Shimon ben Hanas. Rabbi Kiva says the area for which one occurs karos for an intentional transgression and a sin offering for unintentional. For there we must remove it, but all other areas we cover with a pot. Reb Shimon says, wherever the sages have granted a dispensation, they have given you what is yours, and for they have not permitted except that which is a rabbinical decree. Okay.
Then back Hajan Alach Maseches Eruvin, back to Aleph Daled.
Okay. Aleph Daled?
Yeah.
I thought it was Aleph Aleph.
We did Aleph the first three yesterday.
Oh, I wasn't here. Okay. Okay. Aleph Daled. Okay. With wide enough to hold an ariach and strong enough.
This is talking about the beam across the entrance of the alleyway. How big does it have to be to separate it from the Rishos Harabim?
Wide enough to hold an arak and strong enough to hold an arak. Rabbi Yehuda says wide, even if it is not strong. If it was made of straw or reeds, we view it as if it were made of metal. Bent, we view it as if it was straight, and rounded, we view it as if it was squared. Anything which has a circumference of 3 fists has a diameter of 1 fist. The poles of which we spoke, their height is 10 tefachim, and while their width and thickness of any size, Rabbi Yoshi says their width is 3 tefachim. Okay. All right. On to Ma'aser Sheni. Ma'aser Sheni, Daled, right? No.
Yud Beis.
If one says to his son, Ma'aser Sheni is in that corner, and he found it in another corner, it's chulin. If there was manna and he found 200, the surplus is chulin. 200 and he found a manna and it all Ma'aser. Kevin Revai is marked with clouds of earth, oil with clay, and graves with lime, which is dissolved and pours out. Reb Shimon Gamliel says, when does this apply? In the 7th year, the scrupulous put money down and say, whatever is gathered for this shall be redeemed with this money. Karen Revai was brought up in Yerushalayim from the distance of the day's journey in any direction, and which were his limits: Eilat in the south, Akravat in the north, Lod in the west, and in the Jordan in the east. When the produce became plentiful, they decreed that it should be redeemed near the wall, and it was stipulated that whenever they wished, the procedure would be restored to its former state. Reb Yossi says this condition was made after the destruction of the temple, and the condition was that once the temple is rebuilt, the procedure would be restored to its former state. Okay.
You need a space.
She may attribute the stain to anything that which is capable of attributing it. If she slaughtered a domestic animal, a wild animal, or a bird, if she handled garments with stains on them, or if she sat next to those handling such garments, if she killed a louse, she may attribute the stains to it. What is the size stain that she may attribute to a louse? Rekanita ben Antigonus says up to the size of a split bean. And even if she did not kill a louse, if she may attribute the stain to her son or to her husband. If she has a wound covered by a scab which could peel and bleed, she may attribute the stain to that wound. There was an incident with a certain woman who came before Rabbi Akiva. She said to him, I found a blood stain. He said to her, perhaps you had a wound. She said, Yes, but it healed. He said to her, perhaps the scab is fit to peel and being brought blood. She replied, yes, and Rekiva ruled her tahor. He saw his students looking at one another in amazement. He said to them, what is the difficult? What is the matter? Why is the matter difficult in your eyes? The sages did not enact the tumah of bloodstains to be strict, but rather to be lenient. For it states, when a woman has a discharge from her flesh being blood, blood is not a blood stain. Regarding an examination cloth that was placed under the pillow and the blood was found on it, if the stain is round, it's tahor. But if it is elongated, it is tamei. And these are the words of Rabbi Elazar ben Tzaddik.
Gross. Yud Aleph.
All right. If a calf's tail does not reach the knee joint, the sages said the growth of all calves is in this manner. As long as they grow, they stretch out. Concerning which knee joint did they speak? Said Rab Kanina ben Antigonos, concerning the knee joint that is in the middle of the thigh. By reason of these blemishes, a bakor may be slaughtered, and unfit consecrated animals may be redeemed because of them. On account of the following blemishes, one may not slaughter either in the temple or in the provinces. White flecks or water that are not permanent, or back teeth that were not notched, that were not uprooted, or what an animal that has scabs, a wart, or boils, or an aged animal, a sick one emitting an offensive odor, one with which a sin was committed, or that killed a person by the testimony of one witness, or by the confession of the owners of animals of undetermined gender, or of an androgynous animal, one may not slaughter them either in the temple or in the provinces.
So just to get you that subtlety, not being able to slaughter in the temple means that it's not fit for a korban. But not being able to shecht outside the temple means that it's not good enough. It's not enough of a mum to permit a bechor. So it's sort of that in between stage where that's the subtlety of this lashon over here. So this is the gray area.
Rabbi Yishmael says there are no blemishes greater than this. The sages said it is not a bakor and it may be sheared and worked with.
That's not even so. Tumtum androgynous animal is not even a bakor because it's got to be male. If it's not male, then it's I don't know the parsha. Okay.
These blemishes, whether permanent or temporary, whether a man unfit, to them must be added in the case of man, one whose head is wedge-shaped, turnip-shaped, or hammer-shaped, or one whose head is sunken, or whose occupant is flat. Hunchbacks, Rabbi Yehuda declares them fit, but the Chachamim declare them unfit.
Okay.
I'm going to get in.
Yeah, get in. Daled Vav.
If one sells his slave to a Gentile or to someone outside Eretz Yisrael, he goes free. Captives may not be redeemed for more than their value for the sake of the general good, and captives may not be helped to escape for the sake of the general good. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, for the benefit of the captives. Torah scrolls for lactaries and mezuzahs may not be brought from Gentiles for more than their value for the sake of the general good. One who divorces his wife because of a bad reputation may not take her back because of a neder. He may not take her back. You're putting
the comments in the wrong places there.
Right. He may not take her back because of a neder, and he may not take her back. Yehuda says if because of a neder which was known to the public, he may not take her back, but if it because of a neder not known to the public, he may take her back. Reb Meir says if he divorced her because of a neder which requires the inquiry of a sage, he may not take her back. But if because of a neder which does not require the inquiry of a sage, he may take her back. Said Reb Elazar, they prohibited this only because of the other. And said Reb Yossi Bar Yehuda, it occurred in Sidon that one said to his wife, Konam, if I do not divorce you, and he divorced her, then the sages allowed him to take her back for the sake of the general good.
One more.
All right. If one divorces his wife because she is an alonus, Reb Yehuda says he may not take her back. But the Chachamim say he may take her back. If she was married to another and had children from him, and she demands a ketubah, Reb Yehuda says to her, your silence is better for you than your speech.
Why is this? Because he accused her of being infertile, basically.
Right.
And that's why he divorced her. And then she goes and remarries, and turns out she has a baby, and she's the problem is yours. And now if she's an Ilonis, forfeits her kasuba. Now she wants to sue him for the kasuba. He say, you divorced me, and he says, oh, if I'd known that you weren't an Ilonis, I would never have divorced you. And now it's a big oops. Because now he's had charata on the divorce, and now she's gone and lived with another man and had a mamzer. So should they say to her, don't go there. Accept the fact that you didn't get your kasuba, and rather that than that your child is suddenly going to turn out to be a mamzer.
Good. I'm going to do those articles, today sometime. I'll try to get them out to you in some kind of a way, and. I don't know. It looks like a kind of trip I'd like to go on. I'd like to go with you because we're doing the Mishna, but I don't know what your schedule is going to be. You might have to wait.
Yeah, send the information.
And I'll send it to you. Have a great day. Enjoy. Thank you. Bye. See, here we go.